A lesson from the Song of Songs, the first chapter, beginning at the 8th verse. If you do not know yourself, O fairest among women, go forth and follow the tracks of the flocks, and pasture your kids by the shepherds' tents. I have compared you, my friend, to my company of horsemen among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are beautiful as turtledoves, your neck as jewels. We will make you necklaces of gold inlaid with silver. Here endeth the lesson. Because the bride, that is, the Church of Christ, when she had sought the help of his presence, I should have said, a lesson from a treatise by the Venerable Saint Bede. Because this same bride, that is, the Church of Christ, when she had sought the help of his presence in the midst of tribulations, had gone on to say in the persona of the faint-hearted, lest I begin to wander after the flocks of your companions, he, the bridegroom, at once responded to her anxiety with kindly rebuke, like that saying in the Gospel, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" Matthew 14:31. For there follows the words of the bridegroom, "If you do not know yourself, O fairest among women, go forth and follow the tracks of the flocks." He asks, how can you talk as if I could on any account forsake you in the time of trial? And how can you complain that you have been blackened by too much heat, as if from the noonday sun while you were keeping your vineyard? Through the washing of regeneration, I have previously made you the fairest among women, that is, among the synagogues of other doctrines. But I have arranged for your beauty to be restored through the great ordeal of tribulation. But if by chance you neither know these things, nor remember that no one is crowned without contending according to the rules, 2 Timothy 2:5, then go forth from my company and follow the tracks of the flocks, that is, imitate the erratic deeds of those who go astray. Although I myself have resolved that you are truly the keeper of my one flock, for which there is one sheepfold and one shepherd. John 10:16. Here endeth the lesson. Well, after 7 verses, which have taken us 12 sessions, we now hear finally from the bridegroom in this dialogue, this cryptic dialogue between the bridegroom and the bride. The bride being the church, the bridegroom being Christ. Specifically, God, the Word, the eternal Word of the Father in Christ. And what he says in his first words in this dialogue, after hearing from the bride until now, he says, if you do not know yourself, O fairest among women, go forth and follow the tracks of the flocks. This is in response to what the bride had said in the previous verse when she said, lest I begin to wander after the flocks of your companions. which we understood last time to be her saying, show me where you pasture, where you lay down at midday. Show me where you are. Show me the preachers that are making you known. Show me the places where I can find your presence. Because if you don't, then I might wander after the flocks of your companions, meaning the false teachers of the church, the false preachers, the preachers who, and there were many in the original church, the days of the original church, and there are still today teachers of false doctrine that we have to and should try to avoid. And how Bede reads it is the bride having some anxiety. If you don't show me where you are, then I'm worried that I'm going to follow after false teachers. Please show me. I'm worried. I'm feeling anxious. Bede basically sees Jesus' response as, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" But what Bede paraphrases Jesus as saying is, how could you talk as if I could on any account forsake you? How could you talk as if I could on any account forsake you? With that, let us be very comforted. Jesus never forsakes us. He has no desire ever to forsake us. He wants us. He yearns for us. He wants to guide us. He wants to share His mercy. He wants to strengthen us. He wants to feed us. Jesus never wants to forsake us, especially in a time of trial. Because He knows that it's in times of trial that we need Him most. He knows that. So we must remember that, so that when we have our times of trial, the difficulties where we are tempted to lose faith, and maybe we do diminish our faith, remember that Jesus never wants to forsake us, especially in the time of trial. Bede's paraphrase continues, through the washing of regeneration. That refers, of course, to baptism. Through the washing of regeneration, I have previously made you the fairest among women. That is, according to Bede, among the synagogues of other doctrine. Baptism sets us apart. This is part of the glory of baptism. We are incorporated into Christ's body, the church. And in that we are consecrated, set apart, which is what consecrated essentially means. Set apart from other ways of religion, other ways of living our life, other philosophies of life. We're set apart. We're part of the church. Then, quite interestingly, and I'll try my best to explain why I think it's not just interesting, but quite interesting. Bede goes on to say, again paraphrasing Jesus, but I have arranged for your beauty to be restored through the great ordeal of tribulation. Why do I think that is so interesting? Well, it gives a teaching on baptism, which sometimes is not one that comes out much in the teaching of the church. And I'm just speaking of the experience I have of people talking about baptism, priests and colleagues and myself even. That baptism is a regeneration, it is a new birth, it is a consecration, but part of it, from the perspective of God and from Jesus, is that it is the beginning of a life. It's the beginning of the journey. It's a necessary beginning. But it's not the case that once baptized, that's it. You're done. You're going to heaven. Don't worry about it. You could live as immorally as you like after you're baptized, but it doesn't matter. You're going to go to heaven. That's wrong. Instead, in Bede's understanding, God has arranged for the washing of regeneration to happen through the ordeals of our life. God allows us to be tested in our life. God, why am I being tested right now? God is allowing you to be tested. God, why am I going through a time of trial right now? God allows us to go through time of trial. He wants to see us yearn for Him in our time of trial. Because when we yearn, we want Him more. And if our yearning is genuine, then we're changed a little bit by that. He has arranged for us to have trials and tribulation, difficulties. He has arranged for us to be often in situations where we might fall down and stumble, so that we can realize that it is only by God's strength do we get up. Only by faith in Him do we have our feet under us again. That all of the strength that we have in our body, in our mind, in our emotions, and in our soul comes from God's grace, which He plenteously shares with us when we yearn for Him, when we call for Him, when we remember Him. This for Bede is a very important point, because he goes on to paraphrase Jesus by saying, which includes a quote from 2 Timothy and a quote from John 10. Jesus goes on to say, "But if by chance you know neither of these things," meaning that you've forgotten that you were baptized and you've forgotten that trials and tribulations are part of the deal, part of the way that you grow in strength. If you've forgotten those things. And I think some Christians do. And if you forget that no one is crowned without contending according to the rules, meaning no one is crowned without going through the battle. The battle of this life in a fallen world with demonic forces everywhere, including just outside our heart, waiting for any opportunity to get in. We're not crowned without going through the battle, or in Paul's phrase, running the race. If you forget all of that, and I think Jesus is understood here to be loving but impish maybe, then go from my company. Follow the tracks of the flocks. That is, imitate the erratic deeds of those who go astray. God lets us turn from him. He realizes he can't keep us from turning from him. He realizes that he created us with free will. And he knows that there will be times when we do not choose him, that we do not choose to follow his will, which in the most basic understanding is to always love God above everything else and to seek to love God as he is existing in everyone we meet. If we choose to not do that, we will imitate the erratic deeds of those who go astray. That's a somewhat polite way of saying something like, go ahead and drive yourself into a dead end. I laugh a little bit because I've been in those dead ends. That was a sort of a painful laugh. But he finishes his paraphrase of Jesus, which is a paraphrase of go forth and follow the tracks of the flocks, by saying, although I myself have resolved that you are truly the keeper of my one flock, for which there is one sheepfold and one shepherd. So he might see us turning from him, but he will always be faithful. He will always see the church as the arena of his presence, the vineyard of his presence, to use an earlier image in the song. He will always be here in the church, even as people in the church turn from him. He will always be here. And like the prodigal son returning to the father in the parable that Jesus says, when the prodigal son decides to turn back from his erratic ways of life, the father runs to him, as Jesus will and does. Jesus knows our heart. And even as we're struggling in life, even as we're trying and failing or trying and only marginally succeeding of following God's will, Jesus sees our desire. He sees our intentions. This is great solace and comfort to us. We don't have to run all the way to the Father. We can just start running, and he'll meet us well before halfway. That is Christ's faithfulness towards the members of his body, he being the head. That is his love for us, the love for the bride, which is the church. From his side, he is ours. From our side, we must choose him. And not just once. We must choose him every day. Every day. And if we don't, then the next day. And in choosing him, we know that he loves us. We are made in his image. He is remaking us through the struggles and through the difficulties. He is testing us. He is refining us. He is allowing us to grow. And he wants us to grow. What marriage would be a true marriage if there isn't growth in love? And so we should know ourselves. As he says, if you do not know yourself, O fairest among women, We must know ourselves as baptized. We must know ourselves as members of his body. As our identity, we must see ourselves that way, as members of his body, baptized, permanently enjoined with him and in him, so intimately that he lives in us and we live in him. Amen.